On this week's episode, Amazon tries on the Rings of Power. Rick and Morty continue their chaos. And what are we looking forward to for Star Trek Day? All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glassman from Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all our great shows. And if you can, please give us that 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, the Lakers Fast Break, Vampires, and Vitae, Wild Beyond the Witchlight as part of Wizards and Wine, and also the great things that we do at Pop Culture Cosmos because we are the numero uno, number one tabletop RPG streamer out there on Facebook. We've got a absolute ton of great games to show you right there in the video section at Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook. In fact, we have games all weekend long with our fabulous DM Mitch. We've got our Monday episodes of Demolition Force, and we're heading to a special number 100 episode with our DM Roger. And of course, we got Vampires and Vitae rocking it every single week. Plus also Wild Beyond the Witchlight and Wizards and Wine. They're rocking it during the week as well. So if you can go ahead and support all that, plus everything that we do at Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook in regards to being the place to go for everything pop culture. All your latest news and information is right there at your very fingertips. PopCultureCosmos.com, where we got a ton of great articles and a ton of great podcast links for you right there. If you can support all of that, it is sincerely appreciated. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. She is back from the land of vacation. She has returned to us, relaxed. Her mind is at ease. Coming back from, I think I saw pictures of you and Robbie, your husband. I think they were on the beaches of the Mediterranean, or was it Rio, or was it Hawaii? I'm not sure. You were all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it was all of the above. Let's be honest.
Okay. Absolutely. Speeding around in the boat that Robbie and you were driving along all over the oceans.
Yeah.
Go ahead and check out what she's doing today at Vampires and Vitae, wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, also as well, you can go ahead and check her out every week on the Demolition Force and Wild Beyond the Witchlight, right there for you as part of the Wizards and Wine experience. It is my good friend. It is Melinda Barkhouse Ross. Melinda, you look refreshed. You look ready to go. You look ready to talk some pop culture today.
I am ready for it. And caught up on some. We really tried to make it a screen-free vacation.
Well, when you're globetrotting on your vacation, it's really hard to go ahead and keep up with everything.
Yeah, that is very true. Some places, it's difficult to, get jet lag under control to be able to watch your shows at the correct times and, stuff like that. So that was also a challenge while we were jet setting around the world.
Okay, but it looks like you had a good vacation. I am happy for you both. I heard also the rumors about the south of France as well.
We don't talk about the south of France.
Okay, we won't. All right, but please.
I'm just kidding. It was a wonderful staycation, and it was a much needed 4 days off, and we're glad to be back at it, though.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. But please go ahead and check out what she's doing today with Vampires of Vitae and Wild Beyond the Witchlight, part of Wizards and Wine. On today's great show, we're going to be talking about a lot of great things. Lord of the Rings is back. Amazon's $500 million gamble and investment is now live and available on Amazon Prime Video in the first 2 episodes of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. How is it? I actually caught the first 2 episodes. I'll have my thoughts here in just a minute. Plus, also as well, Rick and Morty debut season 6 this weekend. So we'll talk about the influence that Rick and Morty has had on some other shows that have dropped in recent times, talking about how they might have even pushed the boundaries of adult animated comedy that much more. We'll talk about She-Hulk episode 3 because I got a chance to check that out, and we'll go ahead and share some thoughts on where we stand with She-Hulk. I also want to talk about The Last of Us. It debuted for the PlayStation earlier this week with a part 1, of course, the original, being remade again after it was remastered after it was done the first time. So in 2013, the game came out. The Last of Us came out to great acclaim and great sales for PlayStation. The next year, they did a remaster. Now, several years later for the PS5, they've done a remake. Was it worth it? Was it needed? We'll go ahead and talk to Melinda, aka the PlayStation fan, and to ask her what she thinks about this remake and see if it was needed. That's coming up on the show. Plus, also as well, in part 1 of our battle for September 8th, because September 8th is a big day. Not only is everything else going on in the world of entertainment and all that, but Disney Plus and Star Trek are going to be battling out with the news as far as what they're going to go ahead and talk about with panels, with discussions, with trailers. What do we need to see as far as in part 1 from Star Trek to take the day on September the 8th? We'll go ahead and talk about that on the show as well. But first, my friend, it is one ring to rule them all. Even though in the case of this one, actually, it's a set of rings, but they didn't really go into much detail on the rings this time around yet because it's just getting started. But it is the Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. It is right now the first 2 episodes available on Amazon Prime. I will say that it got off to a pretty darn good start. It was very encouraging the way they made it explainable to a audience that may not be as familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien's work or even Peter Jackson's work as far as the movies that this is relating from. I think that they did get off to a good start talking about the battle that ended the First Age, and this, where the series is taking place, is in the Second Age, and maybe the birth of Sauron rising up again to power. That's a possibility, as from what we see, and as the trailers, if everybody hasn't caught it yet, that there's a possibility of Sauron coming back into power, which, if you've seen the movies, you know where that goes. But the leads are basically Galadriel, who is taking command of this. She is a force to be reckoned with as far as her determination and trying to find and kill and thwart Sauron to avenge the death of her brother. And also Elrond and his inner workings and conversations briefly with Galadriel, who ultimately Galadriel makes a decision to go and move into a different direction while he goes off to try and speak to the dwarves that goes ahead and could be obviously they're obviously going to be a big part of what they're doing down the road. But basically, why this show, I think, in episodes 1 and 2 are really good is because it sets up for everybody everything that's going on in Middle Earth, from the elves and the importance that they carry as far as trying to go ahead and do what they can to help Middle Earth. Part of the regime that's there wants to go ahead and continue what they're doing. Part of them wants to go back to their homeland, which is also tied into what we see at the end of the Lord of the Rings movies. Also, as well, you have the dwarves who play a key role in episode 2. And then you also have the humans, which are scattered amongst the first 2 episodes, and a relationship that you see forming between a particular elf and a particular human and some other strange things happen, but also as well the birth of Sauron as far as rising again from the dead, or I should say, but hiding. I should say, rising. His, the search for him proved to be fruitless for Galadriel in the many years that she tried to seek him out. But there's now one or two clues that saying that Sauron will be rising again at some point in time during the series. So your thoughts now that Lord of the Rings: The Ring of Power is now out? Again, the first two episodes, they're beautiful to look at. The cinematography is fantastic. Yes, there's green screening, but not to the point where it becomes distracting. It's not like a Marvel movie. It's really pretty to look at. You can see Amazon dished out the cash for this. The actual landscapes and the actual scenes, the sets, the beautiful designs of everything that goes into it is very Middle Earthish. So it does recreate that type of atmosphere. And I know a lot of people out there were worried about how well Peter Jackson did the Lord of the Rings movies, and to an extent the Hobbit movies. Whatever you think of them, they were still well done as far as from a cinematic standpoint, as far as beauty, look, sets, production, that type of thing. This is no slouch, and I really think people need to check out because it does help people get back into, just like what we've seen in the past 2 weeks with the House of the Dragon, how people are now getting back into Game of Thrones. And to Melinda's credit, she was right. It actually gained 2% of the audience from what it did on its premiere. So it's actually gaining an audience. This does a lot to get you back into the Lord of the Rings.
I am thrilled to hear you say that you liked it because I've
You
read
know I'm a
so
tough
much.
critic at times.
You are, and I appreciate that about you. And I think that because there's been speculation for since it was announced that Amazon was going to take on this project. So I'm glad to hear that it was a positive experience for you. My hope is that the people who have been disappointed in advance actually give it the time and give it the consideration that it sounds like it deserves. I'm going to watch it after we wrap up here because I just got home from work. So, but my goodness, that's really good to hear. And the fact that it's beautiful to look at and that the story is good and that
And it
all of that
intersects
stuff.
it does a great job of intermixing the stories from the humans to the elves to
Yeah,
the Harfoots. The only part about the Harfoots that may be a little bit slow to some people. It doesn't have quite the pace and quite the excitement that the other stories are starting off with, but it's still integral to the part of what you're seeing as far as how it intertwines it all. I just think people need to be a little bit more patient with the Harfoots as part of it, but it goes back and forth really well and it keeps people's interest. And I'm thankful for that because it doesn't stay in one place too long enough to overstay its welcome.
for sure. And the Harfoots, they I mean, having one storyline because there's 5 altogether, right? There's 5 rings. So, with that many threads that you have to weave into this tapestry of a show,
Or
it
sets of
makes
rings, because remember they give out sets to men, sets to
right.
yeah.
Right. But, that's there has to be a storyline that is going to hit a little bit later, a little bit further into the series. And the fact that it's the Harfoots, I think
AKA hobbits to people out there.
hobbits, yeah,
Yeah.
I think is
They're
simply a
they're
positive.
descendants or a part of the hobbit family.
Yeah, I think that it just makes sense. It gives you an opportunity and a place to go with the series as well. It gives you room to grow, a little bit of breath in the storytelling that they're taking on with this. And yeah, I'm excited and I can't wait to watch it after we wrap here tonight.
And there's the usual tension between the elves and the
Of
dwarves and the
course.
elves, the humans and the elves and the humans. There's still all that racism and anger towards the races, different races there, and the Harfoots just want to stay out of it, keep to
Right.
themselves, as of course. But I really think overall it does set you up very nicely. And also at the very beginning, please watch it from the very beginning, because it does have an explainer as far as what will help you if you watch the Lord of the Rings, especially the end of the Lord of the Rings movies, about where they go to, the land of where those ships go to at the end. They explain that because that's where they come from in the beginning to go to Middle Earth. So you see that, and you also get an example of that during the course of the two episodes that gives you more of an idea exactly why it is so special once these elves are chosen, or once it's time to go back to their homeland, or back to the land, beyond what we see in Middle Earth, whatnot. So it really is a great way to go ahead and indoctrinate a lot of people to the Lord of the Rings that may have only just checked out the movies, or may have not checked it out at all. I just really think it's a great starting point. I would have liked to see them even go farther back into the first age, which they only touch on briefly in the first episode. That would have probably been my preference, but I think it's still a good starting point, and it helps wean you into what you would be seeing if you have not seen yet the Lord of the Rings movies.
Absolutely. And, it's shockingly enough, there is a group of people coming up who probably haven't watched the movies yet.
Oh
As
yeah,
hard
no doubt.
as hard to believe as that is for, us old timers.
Well,
um,
I'll tell you a little tidbit. My girls aren't around there; they're sleeping right now. But
yeah.
my girls, who I named after these movies, or my wife and I named after these movies,
Mhm.
they have yet to watch the movies and have resisted trying to watch. I don't want to see it yet. When I'm emotionally prepared, I will go and see it. And it's like, oh my gosh. But my youngest actually sat through the first two episodes. She didn't mind it. She thought it was okay. But trying to get them to watch the whole entire experience or read the books yet, they're softening than they did
Yep.
in the past 5 years. They're softening a little bit. So I'm hopeful of that grateful day. They said, in their own time and space, Dad, we'll go ahead and experience Lord of the Rings. And I said, okay, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that will happen for you, and it will be a
I hope so.
wonderful. Yeah,
We named them.
it's your
After
namesake. My goodness. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll see. We'll see. But I do highly recommend the first two episodes of Lord of the Rings, especially episode one. Although episode one and episode one, it bleeds over the explanations and the things. The dwarves aren't even introduced until episode two, so it bleeds into, it's like the first episode and a half is an explainer for what's going on in the Second Age in Middle Earth in Lord of the Rings. So I'm hopeful that people get a chance to check it out. But it really does tell a pretty good story so far. I'm intrigued. It does not look like they've penny pinched at all at Amazon for a television show. This looks to be top notch, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of what we can see in Lord of the Rings.
Fantastic. I am very excited to experience it for the very first time. Do you want me to text you as it's happening?
Absolutely. I'll be up
Okay.
editing, so it really
Yeah.
doesn't
Right. I'll give you the play-by-play of my thoughts.
There you go. Absolutely
Yeah.
indeed. But what are your thoughts out there on Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, the first two episodes? Have you seen them? Do you want to see them? Do you want to get back into the Lord of the Rings? Please let us know your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. One last thing, Melinda. I am still saddened in a way to see that they've not, Amazon, with all the hundreds of millions of dollars that they put into this, I understand. I've seen advertising for it, but not to the level or the extent that I really thought I would. In fact, we saw. I mentioned last year we talked about the movie, the one of the worst movie I thought of last year,
Right.
the Chris Pratt movie that I thought was so bad. They actually showed it as far as the advertising all over the place. Plus, even on your packaging from Amazon, it got to the point. I'd love to see them do that with the Lord of the Rings. I really think that would be a great way to get people in. Give me Lord of the Rings packaging on my next Amazon purchase. Got to do it.
Yeah, or at least an insert, like a little insert in your box that says, "Hey,
Yeah,
there's a new show and it's really cool and you should watch it. Here's a
absolutely.
fake ring."
Well, one
Can you
fake
imagine?
ring to rule them
To rule
all.
them all.
So, what are your thoughts out there on Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power? please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, there's so much more to talk about on today's episode. It's Melinda Barkhouse Ross and me, Gerald Glassford, coming right back at you here at the PCC Multiverse. It is season 6 upon us this weekend with Rick and Morty once again wreaking havoc upon the universe as only they can. I think it's again been, I don't know. Rick and Morty now is something where the writers, the directors, the producers, anybody relating to this now, they're able to go ahead and do so many things they're working on. They're working in conjunction with Star Wars. They're working in conjunction with Marvel. They're working in conjunction with other aspects. Video games, High on Life for the Xbox, which is going to be an Xbox exclusive coming out later this year, is part being written and directed by one of the people behind Rick and Morty, and it's hilarious if you get a chance to check out that trailer. I will say that if you get a chance to go ahead and check out some of the other stuff they're doing, I mean, that leads into Marvel, that leads into Star Wars, some of the great series that they've had so far. They've had an influence there. But Marvel, I mean, what their success in Rick and Morty and what they've done has led them to so much more success all over. And that has also seemed to me a lot of it as far as the influence in some several recent animated comedies that have come out. No, most notably Star Trek Lower Decks. I think is really, really heavily influenced by Rick and Morty as far as the craziness, the style of comedy. I think that FX's Little Demon, which is a show that just recently came out to FX, dealing with heaven and hell and a very angst teenager whose father is the devil and the mother's an angel, I believe, and yeah, just the whole paradox about that, and yeah, it's just really back and forth on that. That's chaos is created with a heavy influence from Rick and Morty. So I mean, in the 6 seasons, I know it's not for everybody. And I know sometimes it's hard to get through because it's so fast paced and it really can get confusing at times between Rick and Morty and all the different multiverses and universes that they have and clones and all the things of that nature. But it is crazy. And sometimes when you embracing the chaos can be quite good.
It really can be, and you can even do it around your D&D table because there's Rick and Morty in D&D as well.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're
so
all
it
over.
really, yeah, it really is kind of permeating through everything.
The new game, the free-to-play game, multiverses, they're a
Yep.
major part of it. So it's crazy.
It
Absolutely.
is, and I haven't watched every single episode of every single season. I just haven't had time. But what I've watched has amused me, and when I sit down to watch some of these adult cartoons, if I'm not at least amused by the humor that's in the show, then it's going to be a pass for me. And I've always enjoyed the Rick and Morty stuff that I have watched, and I've enjoyed the albeit perhaps dysfunctional relationship between Rick and Morty. I think that there's something beautiful about it, as in like a grandson and a grandfather, and how much time they spend together, albeit some of it pretty terrible. But it's great stuff, and I think that if you haven't given Rick and Morty a little bit of your time, maybe just pick a random episode and try it on and see what you think.
Well, 6 seasons in, it is clearly one of the most popular and most followed animated comedies that are out there. And again, a lot of these most recent comedies, these animated comedies, are heavily borrowing from the style and the chaos that is created on Rick and Morty. I think that's something that even the producers of some of these shows have talked about the influence that Rick and Morty has. It likens to me like what the success of The Simpsons and South Park
Yeah.
and those shows, what they've done to animated features, animated series of those generations, and how they've been able to go ahead and provide a lot of influence for comedies around that. So yeah, it just seems to me right now that 6 seasons in, it's going strong, and it doesn't seem to be letting up anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Like When you watch shows like F is for Family, um, Robbie, my husband, enjoys, Family Guy, Rick and Morty, all of that kind of stuff. In fact, I started watching Rick and Morty with Rob. So he's not a huge fan of vulgar humor for the sake of being vulgar. He likes it to be, have some smart leaning in the jokes. He doesn't like, yeah, just vulgarity for the sake of what I can get away with. And he's a big fan of Rick and Morty. I don't know that that has any currency or any weight to anybody who might be on the fence about checking out a couple of episodes if they haven't watched it at this point.
Mhm.
But um, we've spent time watching Rick and Morty. We've never sat down and watched F is for Family together. So I don't know if that has any value to anybody whatsoever, but it is something that I've considered for quite a while. So
There you go. But it
yeah.
is Rick and Morty. It's season 6. So please go ahead and check it out this weekend. It is debuting this weekend on Adult Swim. So please, if you have thoughts on Rick and Morty as they hit season 6, please let us know your thoughts. Popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, before we hit the break, I wanted to go ahead and talk about She Hulk episode 3 real quick. And with She Hulk, Jennifer Walters, I guess, I mean, the latest episode has her being instrumental in freeing Blonsky, Neil Blonsky, or AKA the Abomination, ultimately from prison. So it looks like he gets his parole because that's basically what the gist of most of the episode was about, was getting paroled, getting him paroled with the help of Wong, who makes an appearance and explains why he did what he did when it concerns the things that he did with Abomination in the fight chamber. If you remember the Legend of Shang-Chi movie that he was a part of. So if you remember that scene as far as them in the fight club there, that delves into that aspect of it. He explains why he did it. He explains that Abomination wanted to return instead of getting asylum in the inner sanctum. He decided to go back to his jail cell to serve out his sentence. So I think that's what did it as far as getting him his parole. So that will now go forward in the series about Neil Blonsky, aka Abomination, now being able to run his or do his thing as far as his meditation courses from his farm that his followers have set up for him. So, and that's part of the joke that's in there during this show. But yeah, most of that was based on the episode for this week. It was all right for what it was, trying to get into kind of like a lawyer comedy episode, case of the week type deal. The side case from one of the other individuals with her law firm, the superhero law firm, wanted to go ahead and focus on a new Asgardian shapeshifter that tricked a former colleague of Jennifer Walters into believing she was Megan Thee Stallion, which led to a appearance by Megan Thee Stallion, and at the end, as far as a cutscene, a dance off, a shake per se, in a twerk per se,
A
I guess.
twerk,
With
yeah.
yes, a twerk. Yes, She-Hulk
Yeah.
twerked with Megan Thee Stallion at the end of the episode. So again, wasn't news substantial as far as anything other than Abomination now gets his release. Your thoughts on this as the story develops in She-Hulk? It's been all right for what it was. Again, as I've told you off air, I think this show moves too briskly for its own good to flesh out things. Sometimes it leaves things on the corner or trying to explain things it doesn't really do a good job as far as Titania, which we talked about earlier, as far as having a disagreement in traffic court, which led to her almost throwing a desk at a jury and crashing through, which saw She-Hulk save in episode 1. So really doesn't go about doing a great job of explaining a lot of the side stuff very well, but because it goes so fast, there's also a group of thugs that tried to go ahead and attack She-Hulk and try to get her blood, but they're unable to because it looks like some mysterious individual wants her blood to see if they can, obviously try and get the Hulk power. But for what it's worth, it's okay. It's just something again where I'm seeing from Marvel where it's just okay, but I think that sometimes there's short amount of episodes, and the short time limit within those episodes are causing these MCU series as of right now to not being able to get fleshed out.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that they're looking at these series as a way to flesh out like real huge storylines so much as it's a way for them to introduce the next characters that you're going to see that will start to carry the Marvel banner forward as we go
Well said.
into,
I think
the
you're right.
next phase. So I think that's probably a large part of what they're doing, especially where they're tying in, Hulk, they're tying in Shang-Chi, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that I think that's what the attempt is here.
I think you're exactly right. I try to look at things in that perspective if that's the case. And yeah, again, that's what this phase 4 has been all about, is a lot of introductions for a lot of characters who are going to be a bigger part of the MCU going forward. It is what it is, but yeah, still you got to look on an episode by episode basis. I tried to, for a general audience, and say, is this general audience going to stay watching She-Hulk? If these episodes are not good, then they're probably not going to stay, but they're acceptable enough. They're in short bursts. It's just like I said, fleshing out these characters or fleshing out these stories is not going to happen to what I feel that it should be, simply because of the fact it's like you said, these are episodes are serving a greater purpose than telling their own story.
Sure, and I try to look at it, in terms of and bear with me because it's a bit of a journey, Gerald. I try to look at it in terms of Dungeons and Dragons sessions, right? Where you have action, 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 travel, 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 and then you have a shopping episode, and things
Yep.
can slow down a little bit, and your characters can interact with each other a little bit more than they normally would. They can DM can introduce some new, NPCs that are going to be important to the story. So perhaps there's a shopping in quotations, shopping episode in the future that will help slow things down a little bit and maybe flesh some of that out a little bit more. And then we're going to get right back into, continuing to move forward at that breakneck speed.
And we have seen that in some of the series that Marvel has put out. That there's been, like, before the last episode or the last two episodes, we've seen an episode where people can go ahead and breathe a little bit and take in a little bit more exposition and storytelling. So let's hope for that. We'll see. But it is She-Hulk episode 3. I thought it was okay. But again, the series so far has just been okay for me. Has it been something much more for you? Please let us know. PopCultureCosmos@yahoo.com. Well, half hour down, half hour to go. It's Melinda Barkhouse Ross and me, Gerald Glassford, along right here at the PCC Multiverse. But before we get into the rest of the half hour, Melinda needs to give you an update on what's going on with everything that she's doing with Vampires and Vitae, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, with Wizards and Wine, everything that she's doing out there. So please go ahead, Melinda, take the cue and go ahead and let us know what you're up to with all the great stuff in the world of tabletop RPG.
So I'm just going to fill the last 30 minutes. Is that okay?
That sounds good to me.
No, not really. But so coming up this Monday, we are back at the Las Vegas table for Wizards and Wine. And it's going to be a double episode release day as well, because vacation started before I got the Halifax table's latest episode edited and sent out to all the podcasting platforms. So yeah, it's going to be a double episode release coming up on Monday, plus the live stream. So there's going to be more Wizards and Wine than you can handle in one day this coming Monday. And this coming Sunday, Vampires and Vitae, we're back at the table again with Tyler, Roger, Robbie, and myself. Margie on her flight right now as she makes the move from the US over to Ireland. Once she gets settled, Margie will be remoting back in with us, and you'll see Helen and her storyline continue to build and pardon the pun, flesh out a little bit more. Yeah, so we're all very excited for that and can't wait to get back to the table. And I haven't seen Robbie as a storyteller seem this relaxed in a really long time. So I'm sure that we have some pretty wild stuff in store for us with Vampires and Vitae.
There you go. It is Vampires and Vitae. Please go ahead and check it out today, wherever you get your podcasts, or stop by the Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, where you catch the videotaping that's done every Sunday right there for Vampires and Vitae. And then Wild Beyond the Witchlight, right there for you. Go ahead and check it out Monday night at Podcast by Melinda on Facebook or Pop Culture Cosmos right there on Facebook as well. But my friend, there's so much more to talk about on on the back half of the show. First up, I wanted to go ahead and talk about the battle for September 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And why are we doing this on the 1st? Because you and I will be talking all the stuff and running down all the stuff that went on during that day when it concerns Disney Plus Day, when it concerns Star Trek Day. But in part one of my conversation, Battle of September 8th, wanted you, as the Star Trek fan, I am a Star Trek fan too, but as the Star Trek fan of the pop culture cosmos, to go ahead and focus on Star Trek Day. I'll let Josh focus in on Disney Plus Day and what they need to go ahead and do and announce. But for you, what does Star Trek need to do to go ahead and really showcase, really take the day, because they need to? They're the underdog. They're the ones that I thought should have changed the day, seeing how Disney Plus Day and D23 is going to start up on that day. Really thought that was an error in their part because they've got a lot of good momentum going into this. I don't want to see them get stepped on by Disney, but it's looking more and more like that. Unless they pull off a zinger that gets everybody talking. All the major television series, both Picard, Strange New Worlds, Discovery, what the Nickelodeon show, Star Trek
Mm-hmm.
Lower Decks, they're all going to be represented with panels there. There's also hopefully going to be talk about this Star Trek movie, which is a lot in disarray right now, seemingly because the director walked off the project to go be the director of Fantastic Four for Marvel. So I want to hear your thoughts. What will win the day in the battle for September 8th for Star Trek?
It depends on what you're looking for, I think. If you are I mean, I'm just looking at some of the because they're doing like a worldwide free live event. It's all going to be online, so you'll be able to check it out yourself. While you're at work pretending to be working, it's going to be fine. Your boss will never know. Um, but they have members of the casts from all of the Star Trek television series all stopping by to have a chat with the hosts. And there's also going to be a tribute to Nichelle Nichols. You're going to get a behind the scenes tour of Star Trek Discovery. And one thing that I'm very excited about and has made me a little bit optimistic, because I've talked before about how Star Trek sometimes comes across as though it doesn't like its fans very much. And I'm just talking about, uh, the fan made movies and things like that start to happen. Star Trek always puts a stop to it. But one of the things that's happening is they're going to feature Star Trek cosplayers in a like runway kind of situation. So I'm optimistic that that may start to show perhaps a different tone when it comes to Star Trek and Star Trek fans finally getting along side by side. Because I've even heard of cosplayers getting cease and desist notices when their cosplays are too screen accurate. Because I don't know if Star Trek is concerned that people are going to confuse a fan with, official members of any cast of any show. I'm optimistic that hopefully is going to be a shift in tone for the Star Trek relations with fans, and yeah, I'm excited for it. And they're doing like a what's it like enhanced reality stuff. Sorry, augmented reality. That's what it is. They're called Delta portals, and in the U.S., if you happen to be in Los Angeles, New York, or Chicago, you're going to be able to go and check out these Delta portals, and you'll scan a QR code, and it's going to um, take stuff, and it's going to become like a mixed reality portal that will bring you into the world of Star Trek, which I think is ridiculously cool. I'm so upset that there isn't one in Las Vegas. I might have to drive to Los Angeles, check out the Grove so I can find the Delta and get the scan and see what's going on with that. But yeah, no, I think that this is a positive step for Star Trek when it comes to, again, those fan relations, which can be a little tempered or tepid at times.
That it can, and I'm hoping that they will go ahead and announce some big things. They're obviously going to showcase some trailers for Star Trek Picard, maybe Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It's reported that both series have actually filmed and wrapped both their seasons already, as far as season 2 for Star Trek Strange New Worlds and season 3 for Picard, which will be the final season for Star Trek Picard. There's a lot of rumors that Star Trek Discovery may get to its final season, which would be season 5. There's a lot of rumors that that may be the last of we see of Star Trek Discovery, because Star Trek Strange New Worlds may now be the new favorite child among the the episodes of Star Trek that are out there. I mean, deservedly so, because Star Trek Discovery, again, start off a little bit on a rocky note, was a part of CBS. It migrated over to Paramount Plus, found a life on Paramount Plus, and has actually done better over the years. And it's still a great part of the Star Trek pantheon, but it's not really gotten the pomp and circumstance that Star Trek Strange New Worlds has in such a
Sure.
short amount of time, because Star Trek Strange New Worlds has many people outside of the Star Trek universe talking about it. It's really good. It is really, really good. And at a lot of times, it's been really hard to say that about Star Trek Discovery, because people talk about it's too melodramatic, too emotional, too much drama put in,
Yeah,
not
but
enough
I remember
action.
people
Sometimes it
saying
doesn't.
this.
Well,
I rem-
again, that's been over the years. Actually, I thought the last season was pretty good. The season before, I think, was its best. Season 3, if I remember correctly, I think was probably their best season overall. I think that it still has a good place to go and a long way to go, and it can, because it's set in the future right now. I think it can go a long way. There's talk about is it Section 31 or Section 37, the outfit that is being led by Michelle Yao.
Mhm. Who I adore. Yes, more
There's
of
a
her.
possibility of that series, which has been long rumored, that could be announced as a official series that's underway. There's more talk of other series that could be greenlit, or have been greenlit, which will be officially announced during the course of the Star Trek Day. Of course, the Nickelodeon show, which is very integral to what the Star Trek universe going forward needs to be, because it needs to resonate with fans of a younger age, so that they can appreciate Star Trek going forward, because that's, I think, very crucial. So I thought that was a very smart move for Star Trek to go ahead and base the series on Nickelodeon. And then, of course, Star Trek Lower Decks, which is bringing something different. I know that's been very polarizing. A lot of people have been very reluctant to embrace Star Trek Lower Decks, because, oh, this isn't Star Trek. This was Star Trek all about. I was ready to embrace it, and I absolutely love Star Trek Lower Decks. I love the way it calls out Star Trek on each and every episode in some form or
Right.
fashion, as far as the whole pantheon. I love how it pokes fun at Star Trek, and it makes Star Trek fun. It makes it
Mhm.
enjoyable to watch, and it's really a great part of it. And I'm loving the fact that the two of the cast members of Lower Decks, will actually be a part in some form or fashion and integrate at some point in time in the second season of Star Trek Strange New World. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to work that out. So overall, I'm pretty good on where the Star Trek universe is at. It needs to grow. It needs to go more, because you have a lot of things coming up in the future. One of the major things that they need to do is that Star Trek movie, announce a big name director, say you're still on track for late next year, get the Kelvin universe stars officially involved in this. No more rumors or saying that they are in, or that they've not been hired, or that they've not been brought in yet, or the Paramount says one minute that they're all in, and the actors themselves, they said they haven't signed any contracts. So for once and for all, get rid of the confusion, get a director in, and build something that can knock it out of the park. I would love to see them go back to that scenario where they get Chris Hemsworth, who played actually Jim Kirk's father
Mhm.
in the original rebooted Star Trek from J.J. Abrams. I'd love to see him back involved in some form or fashion. I think that would be a really nice boost. And I think with the Star Wars movie, Rogue Squadron, or whatever Star Wars movie that they are actually eventually going to put out, supposedly targeted also for next year at the end of next year. I really think this is a chance for them to stake claim Star Trek and compete on Star Wars, and can compete with Star Wars on a more even plane at the movie box office. This is their opportunity because after Rise of the Skywalker just laid a dud, people are like, with the whole future of Star Wars movies out there. So right now, it's really a good time for Star Trek to really take a claim and try and compete for the first time at the movies on a more even plane with Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, for people who say that Star Trek Discovery is too melodramatic, it's too this, it's too that, I remember the exact same conversations happening around Deep Space Nine because I had some of those conversations. I was like, "This is not Star Trek. It's not right. It's not the same."
Well,
And now
part of it
I
was
really
part.
enjoy it.
They were based on the station, so everything, all the action had to come to them. It wasn't
Right.
until that they had the war that they finally start going out and doing stuff. So they were burdened by the fact that they could not go explore for a great bit of the early parts of it. So I can see why people said that.
Sure, I'm just saying that, the idea that, this Trek is too melodramatic is not a new argument, in terms of the Star Trek
Sure.
universe. That's all I wanted to
Well, I think the
to
original
put
Star
out
Trek
there.
movie is still going on. I think it's still playing. That
In
movie. That
some
movie.
multiverse somewhere, absolutely,
Yeah,
yes, it
it's
is,
it's
yeah.
so slow of a movie. I think it's still going on. I think.
Well, there was, this I can't oh my goodness, now I'm drawing a blank of exactly which movie it was, but it was Captain Kirk going up to the Enterprise. It was the new Enterprise. It was still docked, and I can remember the commentary, and William Shatner was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the special effects guys were just really excited about playing with their new toys because it's like a half an hour of just Kirk
It's
standing
the
in a
original Star
window."
Trek movie.
Yeah, it was Star Trek standing in the window, and it's just shot after shot after shot of the new ship, and he was like, "It was just special
The problem,
effects,
the
having fun
problem
with special
though, is
effects."
when they threw it back to the shuttle with him in the shuttle. I think it was him
Yeah.
and McCoy in the shuttle. That was some
Mhm.
awful CGI. That was
It
awful special effects.
was,
The
it
shuttle part,
was.
awful. They looked like it was a shuttle, and there was like two cutouts, and it had
Yes.
them. Yeah, it was just that was bad. But need I digress on that period of my
Right.
life when I
Yeah.
was watching that movie and
Yeah.
spent 2 years watching it. But I will say that there have been good parts of Star Trek, and that is Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. A lot of momentum is now very positive for Star Trek. Again, they've done a lot of good things. Paramount has in recent years. Again, the Nickelodeon show is a stroke of genius, I think, because it's catering to a younger audience. Star Trek, Star Trek Lower Decks has been a great find for me and has been a great part of it because it's catering to an even different audience, to a comedy audience that might actually start embracing the rest of Star Trek. And Star Trek Strange New Worlds is fun, it's exciting, it's fast paced, it's hip. Have you seen New Worlds as of yet?
I don't wanna talk about it.
Okay, fair enough indeed. We still got to have our Star Trek episode, but
We do,
I
I know.
we do have to have our Star Trek episode. But I will say again that I think the key to this is still, even though we live in the world of streaming, still, if you can get one last good run for the Kelvin crew in a box office movie that's set up to go ahead for them for success, because the last movie, Star Trek Beyond, it came out at a time. It came, I think, right after the Bourne movie, the last Bourne movie. It came out at a time where it was just another movie that came out. If you could find a real sweet spot in the calendar for them, and you get them the right promotion and one last hurrah run for the crew, the Kelvin crew, I really think it will knock the socks off people. I really think that you can embrace that one last time, and I really think that you can go ahead and compete on a more even level with Star Wars on the movie screen as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that all of that, sounds like, well, it sounds like I wanna say a new hope? Nope, that's not what I mean. But it does sound,
A
I'm
Strange New
for
World?
yeah, I'm forever going to be optimistic with Star Trek. I think at this point it's in my DNA, which I think I got from that particular gene from my dad, because we spent hours watching Star Trek together. hours and hours and hours. So I'm always going to have time for it. For me, and I've said it before on the show too, that, even bad Trek is better than no Trek. And now we're getting legitimately good Star Trek. And if you are a Star Trek fan and you're not talking everybody that you know into watching at least an episode, what are you doing, man?
Well,
Let's
there's
get this
that.
grassroots stuff going, shall we?
Well, the one thing though is Star Trek is one of the major IPs of all time in pop culture. But
Yeah.
there's one thing escaping it, and that is a box office hit the likes of what we've
Yeah.
seen from these other major IPs. I mean, Star Trek Into Darkness, I think, is the one that is the most all time, that's earned the most all time as far as gross. I think it's earned more than the original Star Trek reboot, just slightly. But even then, we're only talking about just under $500 million. There's still, even with the fact that the Star Trek rebooted has been seen by everybody over the years on cable television.
Yeah.
I still think that that's the one final frontier, to pardon a pun, to
Mhm.
that it needs to get to, is that 700 800 million $1 billion blockbuster Star Trek needs in order for it to break through and be something that will get finally through and across to a general huge wide audience.
I agree. And just did a quick Google search. First Contact, the highest grossing film on its opening weekend for Star Trek.
Yeah, but
Um,
overall, for as far as the
yeah. It
yeah,
eventually made 92 million, it says. So,
yeah, that's not, again, that's that's good, but that's obviously not nothing anywhere near it. I think worldwide grosses, I think you'll see that Star Trek Into Darkness was the one that has earned the most. I think Star Trek, the Star Trek Beyond, the last one didn't make quite as much as the other two rebooted Kelvin movies. So
right.
I really
Yeah.
think, again, you finally can start enough momentum, get this going, and it starts to me on September 8th. Hopefully, we'll see something. Hopefully, we'll hear something. Hopefully, we'll get something that will get everybody talking. But they do need everybody to go ahead and talk about it, because they do need something to go ahead and whip out there that's going to get people talking, because if they don't, they're going to get snowed under by Disney on September 8th. And that, again, is just one of those head shaking moments, again, from Star Trek that makes you go, oh, they blew it again.
Yeah, but yeah, like you said, it's a great opportunity. They just have to go ahead and grab that brass ring and run with it, really. But I also have even great memories of going to see Star Trek in theaters in full on Klingon costuming. So I
There
mean,
you go. Maybe you
uh,
need to be one of the cosplayers going down
oh my
on the
gosh,
17th, on that, going down the aisle on September 8th.
yes, work.
There you go. But you got to remember your Klingon. Got to refresh on the Klingon. All right.
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts out there on Star Trek and what it needs to do on September 8th to be really in the mix as far as pop culture? They really have a lot of good momentum going into it, but on the same day, Disney Plus is going to be throwing a lot of stuff at you. And D23 right there at the start of it. What does Star Trek need to do to go ahead and have people talking? Please let us know your thoughts. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. And I'll add this before we hit the break, and that is, with DC, we talk about all the time, it's a mess, it's disorganized, all over the place, but yet they could throw a $1 billion movie out at you with Aquaman, with the Joker. The problem is Star Trek can't. That's the last and final frontier, and I certainly hope at some point in time they finally cross that final frontier. We're back, and we're back at the we're back to close out the show. It's Gerald Glassford along with Melinda Barkhouse Ross. Thank you so much for joining us here at the PCC Multiverse. Truly appreciate everyone following us, and please go ahead and subscribe today on YouTube or like our Facebook page. We've got over 1,000 followers on Facebook, closing in on 1,100. So please go ahead and check us out, Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook. Before we head on out, my friend, wanted to go ahead and talk real quick about The Last of Us Part 1, the remake, not the remaster, because again, there's a difference between remake and remaster. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes everyone else out there forgets. But 2013, the game came out to great acclaim and great sales for Sony. 2014, they decided they loved it so much, they remastered it for the PS4 and the PS4, eventually for the PS4 Pro. Now they have a remake, adding some features in, but basically making it look fantastic. The one thing I will say is that this game, which looked good in the PS3, which looked really good on the PS4, looks
Mhm.
absolutely fantastic as far as what they did for it on the PS5. But,
Yeah, a lot of sorry.
but, is it a game that you want to spend $70 and play again for possibly, for many people out there, the third time? So let me ask you this: $70 remake of a game that you probably played in 2014, 2013, or at some point in time in the past 10 years. Your thoughts on the Last of Us Part 1 remake for
Well,
PS5?
I'm already seeing reviews for it.
Oh, they're
And
fantastic.
yeah,
But remember, they're
and
getting codes. They're not paying $70.
sure. No, I understand that. I'm just saying some of the reviews to convince you to part with $70 is what I'm getting at, right?
Mhm.
And they're all saying unanimously through everything that I'm looking at is that there are enough upgrades to make it worth the price of purchase and enough upgrades, and I quote, to leave us stunned. The PS5 refresh redeems combat, reignites drama, but is still very much chained to 2013.
I know that they've upgraded the AI of the enemies. Again,
Mhm.
the graphics upgrades and the things they've done with lighting, shadows, textures, polygons, the characters. I know they've done a great deal of work on the characters themselves. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It looks absolutely great. Naughty Dog, again, one of my favorites. Art houses, one of my favorite studios. They knocked it out of the park again. But the thing is, when you talk about $70, and for some people, they now have to pay for a more expensive PlayStation 5 in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
I really thought that it would be a great sign of appreciation if PlayStation actually, with the price bump, gave them a free copy of this. I really thought that would be a great sign. But again, that's just me, thinking all crazy. So sorry, Sony out there, but I really think that for PlayStation fans, this is going to be hard to go ahead for people out there to buy a third time this game.
Yeah, I'm just I don't know. I'm just kind of quickly going through this and scanning through stuff and it's
Have you
all
played The Last of Us?
yes, of course.
Okay.
And this is saying, a lot of the stuff is very, very familiar. They're saying that even some of the codes to locked safes are the same.
Mhm.
Um, things that way, hidden collectibles, conversations that you'll see,
No
that kind of
multiplayer.
stuff. Yeah, and they just said it's really a massive touch up in terms of the narrative and the world design, but most of the original game has been preserved. So,
Yeah.
if you loved the game, I think it's an easy $70 to spend, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I think if you haven't played the game, I think it is. I
Sure.
think if you have played the game, it might be not so easy of a $7 because again, let's say you get your PlayStation 5. Let's say Robbie has it right there for you. He brings it to you. He's got a nice little bow on it. Says, "Hey, honey, got this for you as a gift because it was great traveling the Mediterranean with you on your vacation." And potatoes aside, I want to
Right.
go. That was an off air joke right there for you. But I wanted to go ahead and here's your PlayStation 5. You know, Getting that Last of Us again. I mean, you've played it, but it doesn't seem like for a lot of people it's going to be that I got to buy it now. I got to rush out and buy it now because I understand there's not a whole lot of games that have come out for the PlayStation 5. But
Mhm.
still, I mean, spending $70 on this, no matter how good it looks, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think it's going to be for that reason. The chance to play The Last of Us and have it look as amazing as things have been looking on the PS5. I
Well, you can
mean,
still play the PS5 if you got a digital copy of it. I think even
yeah,
if you got a PS4 copy of it, you can still pop it in there. It just will not look quite as good.
exactly. So that's really kind of the peg that they're hanging their hats on for the PS5, is it not? That the graphics are so incredible on the PS5.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
why wouldn't you take a game that is beloved and, you know, take it and put it and optimize it for the latest console? I don't know. I feel like if I had a PS5, I would probably talk myself into spending the $70.
Well, I will say this. Let me put it to you like this. Okay.
Okay.
You know how much I love Mass Effect right behind me. I've got
I
Commander
mean,
Shepard
we've talked
looking at.
about it a couple of times. Yeah.
Yes, yes. You see him with the lays right there for you around his neck and all that. So around his neck and
Yeah.
yeah, you know how much I appreciate the series and you got the banners and all that. And I got Mass Effect, the definitive edition last year. Josh and I, we ran out, got it first day, no problem. This is a game that we've both gone through the trilogy, and has spent already many, many hours, tens and tens of hours in a previous decade playing these games of the Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. If it came out tomorrow with a remake of this definitive edition, specifically for the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5, I even I and my love for Mass Effect would say that's a hard pill to swallow because I've already spent hundreds of dollars because you figure I've already spent like the definitive edition cost me 60. Then you've got the first whatever I spent on the 1, 2, and 3. I've already spent my share of money on this game so far, and then you're asking me to do it one more time. I mean, just yeah, that's going to be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow.
Yeah, sure. And it might not be something that you get day of release, but I bet you'd warm up to it because of your love for the IP.
I might, I might, I would, I'll be more warming of that, and even The Last of Us
Yeah.
around Black Friday, which I think, as you know, the September releases always get a nice discount. Their first major sale or discount usually happens around Black Friday. So I have a feeling The Last of Us Part 1 will be heavily discounted around
Yeah.
that time. It's just a kind of a gut feeling, I think. I think that's something
Spidey
we've seen
senses are
before.
tingling over that
Well,
one.
yeah, because you usually see Madden drop to about 30, 35 on Black Friday, and that just came out a couple weeks ago. Saints Row, which came out the week after that, and which meaning last week, I really think that's going to drop. And I think Last of Us will probably, since it came out this week, I don't think it'll be as popular almost 2.5 months from now. And I think it'll need a sales boost. And in order to do that, Sony will ask you to go ahead. Yeah, you can chop the price. How much? We'll wait and see. But I think that at some point in time, you'll see a price dip and then a lot more interest in it because of that.
Sure. And I mean that's completely fair, honestly.
All right. Fair enough indeed. But you heard Melinda. She's a day one buyer when she gets her PS5 for The Last of Us Part 1. I would wait for a discount. What are your thoughts out there on The Last of Us? I know Josh has some thoughts. So if I remember, I'm going to ask him on the Monday show because I know he sent me some texts and DMs like, I got to buy this again, again.
Uh-huh.
So we want to hear your thoughts. Are you ready to buy The Last of Us Part 1 again for the third time for the latest Last of Us Part 1 remake, now available on the PlayStation 5? Please let us know your thoughts. PopCultureCosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great adventure once again on the PCC Multiverse. You rocked it as always. You coming back from the Rio Mediterranean slash
Mhm.
South of France
Mhm.
vacation, South
Mhm.
slash Italian vacation
Yep.
slash Hawaiian
Yeah.
vacation,
Yep.
Mazatlan, all
Yep.
these great vacation destinations you
Ibiza,
seem
we
to.
swung through there.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a
All in
busy
four
4 days.
days. Yeah. Any last thoughts before we head on out, my friend?
Star Trek Day, I'm very excited for it. I can't wait. And I'm also very excited for you know, I'm very excited for the new season of Rick and Morty.
As am I. I really
Yeah.
wasn't a fan to start off with, but I am now. I
Yeah.
caught the past couple seasons, getting
Mhm.
kind of into it, so I'm ready to go ahead for the chaos
Yeah.
coming up this weekend. So for Melinda Barkhouse Ross, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great